Broadcasting from Salisbury University campus, this is WSDL Ocean City, NPR News Talk 90.7. Putting Delmarva first. Stay tuned for Delmarva Today with your host, Don Rush.
Many war veterans these days are seeking comfort from man's best friend. Welcome to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. It's been estimated that as many as 20% of Iraq and Afghan veterans come home showing signs of post-traumatic stress disorder or depression. Other studies put the figure for PTSD at 14%. The impact can rise from 9% shortly after returning from the war zone to 31% a year out from deployment. Wars in Iraq and Afghanistan have been the longest in American history. Inter-U.S. Kennels Incorporated is a nonprofit organization that rescues shelter dogs and trains them to help veterans cope with PTSD, brain damage, and other combat-related injuries. To talk about this approach, we have in our studio this morning Chris Hardy. He's the executive director of the organization. Also, Dan Atkinson. He is a 25-year veteran of the Army and a graduate of the program. And also, we have his daughter, Ashley Atkinson, who is with the National Guard and volunteers with the organization. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So, Chris, I would first start with you. And what was the idea? I mean, how did this thing get started? What was the idea behind utilizing dogs, and particularly pets, to be at least a complement to whatever kind of therapy, whatever kind of help that some of these soldiers are getting?
Right. Actually, it kind of came to me when I was in Afghanistan, deployed there in Afghanistan. I was walking through one of the field hospitals, and they had a little child there that was blown up. And she was severely damaged, burnt-wise. And I had one of my dogs walking through, and when she saw the dog, she just came to life. So long story short, that was really what got me thinking about the dogs and as far as helping our veterans out with it. So we came back and we started it up because, like you said, in Afghanistan, Iraq, some of the longest wars that we've been in, we got all these soldiers coming back. And like I say, the majority of the disabilities that we work with is actually PTSD. Nightmares, PTSD, along with that, comes anxiety and depression. So that's what really got me focused in, because I've always been a dog person. So, getting dogs from rescues, pairing them up with our veterans, so you're kind of saving two things at one time. So that's what really got me into it, or starting us up.
Now, I understand that the Veterans Affairs, that they will cover vets with disabilities, but they've declined, at least, and you maybe correct me, they've declined to cover utilizing dogs with PTSD, is that right?
That's correct. The only thing that the VA will cover for as far as a service dog is if, as they say, as description-wise, is if it's an extension of your body. So, for example, like if you're an amputee or if you're paralyzed, they will sponsor or pay for a service dog. But as far as anything else, PTSD, nightmares, flashbacks, seizures, you name it, it's all on us.
Why is it that you think?
That is a good question. I've researched and I've looked and I've talked to a plenty of people in the VA, but as of right now, there's just, I don't know if it's not enough money or a program, but we can't do anything with it for right now.
So my understanding, by the way, is that these dogs help for a variety of things. I mean, ranging from social isolation and job absenteeism and so on. What kind of impact do you think you see when you match up a service person with a dog, and what kinds of changes, what kinds of pitfalls do you think that they are able to avoid or at least overcome?
The easiest way I can sum it up in one thing is they save lives. Like the percentage rate is, like I say, 22 per day. Well, with these dogs, there's no medicine like these dogs out there, and these dogs actually save veterans' lives. So, I mean, that's the main thing that we look at, and that's the main thing we come out with.
So what do you think they didn't do for them?
There's a variety of things, because basically what we do is we sit down, once we get a veteran into our program, we sit down and we evaluate the veteran. And because every veteran has their own special needs, if it's PTSD, traumatic brain injury, or seizures or nightmares. So once we evaluate the individual, we can actually pair them up with the dog. So there's a variety of things. For example, for like me, I'm a disabled veteran. Been diagnosed with PTSD. Along with that comes anxiety, depression, TBI, traumatic brain injury, which comes with a lot of memory loss. So these dogs can help us, comfort us. They can actually bring us back into the world. A lot of these veterans haven't been out of their homes in years and years and years. So with our program, we get them involved, we get them active in the program, so they're not sitting around dwelling on the past or thinking about maybe committing suicide or anything like that. So it keeps them occupied, and these dogs actually bring them back into the world. And you can't get much more love than a dog. No matter what you do, you got unconditional love from these animals. So that's an awesome pair up.
So you mentioned a moment ago that you had PTSD. Did you utilize a dog, or was that something, or were you able to? I don't know whether you ever actually overcome anything like that, but
I had a service dog, but she's retired right now. So I've been kind of waiting for my pair to come up with me. But actually, me doing this program with the veterans, these guys and girls are my therapy. Because we can all relate to each other, so we're kind of lean on each other for our support and outside of the dog program as well. So, but yeah, that's where we're at.
So, and where did you serve, by the way?
I did Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Afghanistan, like Dan Ray, all the above.
All the trifecta, as they say, right?
Been around, yes, definitely. I did 11 years altogether.
Ah, okay. So, Dan Atkinson, first describe for me what the conditions were like in those war situations, because they were, in some ways, they were traumatic. They were traumatically different than, say, for instance, the Second World War, and veterans actually had space between the time they left the battlefield and actually the time they got home. What was that like for people? Most people who have no experience whatsoever. What experience was your like, if you can describe that?
I really can't explain it. It's combat in a foreign country these days it's difficult to explain unless you've actually been there. I mean, the lay person, that lives here in the United States, goes to their 9-to-5 jobs, they really can't understand the pressures that you're under. Because from the time you leave your family to the time you land in country, from that moment you step off that plane, your life is in jeopardy 24/7, 7 days a week. You're constantly looking over your shoulder. You're hyper vigilant. Anything and everything can kill you overseas when you're in a combat zone. You don't trust anything. Back in the day, Vietnam, World War I, World War II, you knew what your enemy. You knew who your enemy was. Your enemy was in a uniform. On the other side, in an army. The wars that we're fighting now are individuals that will have their children kill you. That will, they all dress exactly alike. They're a civilian. It's like going to the mall. You go to the mall, and anybody in there at any time could try to kill you. And that's what it's like in country. You're paranoid constantly. Your head's always on a swivel. You don't trust anybody except for the people that are in your unit. And it is very hard when you come home to turn that off. I mean, we are trained to be that way, and it's very difficult, once you get home with your family, to turn that vigilance off and that paranoia off, and it's just very difficult to understand unless you've actually been there.
As I mentioned, I think before the program, I've been reading a bit about Afghanistan, and one of the situations, there was a unit of something like 19 guys who arrived in Afghanistan. After 3 weeks, there were only 6 left.
Yes, sir.
Does those kinds of deaths of your fellow officers, fellow soldiers, does that also have this, emphasize this impact?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You train with individuals in a unit. You become closer than some of your own family members. You rely on each other every day, all day long, 24/7, and they are your family. Closer, I believe, a lot of the guys that I serve with are closer to me than blood relatives, and to lose one it's absolutely devastating, because some people have regret. They feel that it was their fault, that they could have changed something. If they'd have done this, that individual would still be here today. So there's a lot of guilt that goes along with being a service member that loses someone, and that's part of PTSD too, guilt, survivor guilt, and it's hard to get through. There's a lot of therapy, but therapy doesn't do everything. Therapy helps the individual that's going through the therapy. It doesn't cure them. You'll never be cured. It's a constant for the rest of your life. Now, they do get medications which help with some things, but they'll never be cured. Since I've had Gus, from the day I got home, maybe a year later, I started realizing that I had PTSD. I had anger issues. I would just go off at the drop of a hat with anger, and I had no idea why. My family, I started drinking, and I drank constantly. I would not leave my house. I can't tell you how long ago I stopped going to a grocery store or anywhere that there was a crowd. I became a recluse in my own home. Even with my own family, I would push my family away. I built a wall around myself because I didn't want nobody to get in. And when you build a wall, it's hard for people to get in to you, and it's just as hard for you to get out. And so, with a service dog, going to the training sessions and everything got me out of the house. I was responsible. This is my new battle buddy. This is my new battle buddy right here, and I'm responsible for his health and welfare. And you realize that you have to go every week to class. You have to do this. You have to get them out to exercise. They have to go outside to do this, and it gets you into a routine that gets you out of the house and makes you quit thinking about all the stuff that's in your head and in your heart, and you start taking care of something that takes care of you. And like I said, it's a battle buddy. I can't go nowhere without him. I don't go anywhere without him. But now I'm able to go to a store. I'm able to go to a grocery store and get something. Not on peak hours or nothing like that, but I'm still able to get out of the house. I don't drink as much. It was bad enough that I was drinking 30 beers a day, just to sleep and just to get by, because there was nothing helping me. Therapy wasn't helping me. Medications from the VA wasn't helping me. But he helps me because I have to take care of him.
What are the kinds of things, if there are kinds of things, that set off that kind of panic or that kind of comeback in terms of PTSD? Is there... For
me, there's every soldier or everybody with PTSD has triggers.
Yeah.
And they're called triggers. Like me, the smell of diesel fuel, I cannot stand it. I do not like doorways scare the crap out of me because you don't know what's on the other side. And with having Gus, he always goes to the door first, and he will alert me if anybody's on the other side of the door, which makes me feel better going through the door. And diesel fuel, doorways, explosives, loud noises, sudden loud noises make my heart just jump. But there's a lot of triggers, and a lot of people are different.
Let me ask you, by the way, when you came back, and you obviously served a number of times, did you have this feeling that you needed to go back?
Yes.
Was that because of the people you left behind, or was it because of the kind of environment, mental environment that you were in, that's like you were drawn back to that?
I no longer fit in society here when I got home. I was comfortable overseas because that's just the way it was. I was comfortable there, and I was responsible for myself, and I knew my mission, I knew my job, and I did my job well. But when you come home and you no longer have that, you're kind of lost. You don't know what to do with yourself. I was a Cav Scout. I was in the United States Cavalry, and what kind of job is that for me over here? Home in the civilian world, there is none. And it was very difficult. And going back overseas, I knew what I was doing.
Actually, I want to turn to you. So, what was it like when he came back? What was that like for you as a family member?
He was always very drawn away from us. He was always very quiet, and then he would drink, and it was just he couldn't be there for us at all. And it's really hard because when he's gone, we learn to live without him, and then when he comes back home, it's very hard to get him back into our routine, and it almost gets to the point where it feels like he's not really part of our family anymore. He's just, I guess you would say, like an appendage. and because he wasn't who he was when he left, and then he would come home and he wasn't our dad anymore. He was just this guy that we didn't know who you were. Like, he couldn't go to the grocery store with us. He couldn't do anything, and he just would stay at home, and it's almost like he never came home sometimes. It's like he was still there, and it would get really, really difficult because you're so excited to see them, and you're so excited for them to be back in your home, and they're just not the same person. They're not. It doesn't work anymore, and it takes a really long time, and then he would be very excited to leave again, and as a family member, you're sitting there and you're like, I don't want you to leave, especially as a child. You know, I was growing up through all of his deployments, and when he would leave again, he would be so excited, he would be like, oh, well, I have to do this is my job, and, you know, you would sit there and you would be like, well, this is your job, family, this is your family, you built this is who we are. And then he would leave, and then he would come back, and it was always, you never knew what dad you were going to get. You didn't know if you were going to get the dad that left or came back, or it was just, and some days were good days, and he would go out and we'd go play ball, or we'd go to a ball game or something, and then the very next day we couldn't go to the park, we couldn't leave the house, we couldn't do anything, and he would just engorge himself into work sometimes, like a lot, and then it's just like you're still gone because we're still not seeing you. And his drinking got really, really hard, and he would not come home for days. He would be out with his friends and his battle buddies, and he had more of a connection, and seeing him with them, it was like, that's the dad that I want. He's your best friend when you're growing up, and then he comes back home and he's everybody else's best friend, and it was a very hard struggle.
So what was it like in terms of the family dynamic? I mean, your mother, for example. I mean, how did that impact that family unit? I mean, what was it?
Well, it was really, we have a very different case because my parents were divorced.
Okay.
And I actually kind of stayed with foster parents while my dad was deployed. And then when he came back home, it was really hard because I was living with foster parents, and they wanted me to stay with them while I was going through school because everybody knew what was going on with him.
Yeah.
They knew that he was starting to have issues, and they didn't want me to progress back into the family that we had built. So it's a very different dynamic than a lot of other families in that instance. But yeah, it was a struggle, and then he went through another divorce, so it was just a complete broken family all the time. We had no consistency. We couldn't build anything. We couldn't keep things going.
I mean, how does that affect you growing up? I mean, I grew up in a family where the two parents were there like they're forever, and they were always there. What does that do to somebody as you grow up? And how do you cope with that kind of uncertainty, I guess?
You learn responsibility very early. I mean, you take care of yourself a lot. You're in constant missing of your dad. I mean, it's really hard because you don't ever really know what's going on with him. And there was a lot of times after he came back home where it was more or less I was kind of his keeper, and I was trying to take care of him and make sure that he was okay. I was driving him around because he couldn't drive anywhere. When he would go out in public, I was just basically a service dog, and I wasn't very good at it.
Right.
So it was a struggle.
So when he got the dog, what kind of change did you think you saw? Was it immediate or was it gradual?
It was absolutely instantaneously. When he got Gus as a puppy, and I went over to visit him, and it was just, you could just see the connection with him, and he was like just jumping right into all the literature and trying to learn all this stuff about how to do the service dog and how to train him and everything. And it was so nice to see him having I would say hobby, but engorging himself into something. And he started going out, and he takes Gus to the mall and walks around with him, and it's just nice to see him get out of the house, and his drinking cut back, and it's been absolutely amazing. It's to see the transformation in such a short period of time where he's lived a certain way for 15, 20 years, and then all of a sudden this dog comes into his life, and it's absolutely amazing.
Chris, I want to turn to you because you're reacting to all of this. What are your feelings?
I'm teared up right now. You know, it's because I know what he's going through. and to see it from a family aspect of it, because we don't see it from their side. So it's we don't realize because we're dealing with our own issues. And like he was saying before, like they were saying before, is that as far as us coming home, because when we're deployed overseas, we have like our own little, as they described over there, like our own little tribe, our own little group, our own little family. So we know we can always depend on someone or depend on each other. We know we have each other's back over there. We know that everybody that's deployed cares about each other. And like Dan was saying, when we come home, there's nobody. Yeah, we have family, and they're there, supporting us and everything. But we're kind of dealing with our readjustment from over there to back here. Over here, we come back. There's nothing. It's sad to say, but there's like nothing here for us. We have no support as far as like the camaraderie that we had over there. We have no guidance. We have to readjust to, like Dan was saying, our head's on a swivel over there. We come back. My wife's, it's so funny, is I'll be driving down the road. She goes, "Keep your eyes on the road." Well, my head's on the swivel. I'm waiting for someone to pop out from behind the building. I'm looking at the pothole in the road for an IED, so that's the mentality that we have as far as even when we come back. So, but it's so hard to us to readjust to the life back over here. And plus, like you said, we're kind of, we have family, but we're alone. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But yeah, it's tough to readjust. It's tough to readjust for, like Ashley was saying, for both sides, for us and our family members. Because when we come back, like you said, we're changed. We're totally different. And they don't understand that because, like Dan was saying, you really have to be there to understand. So it's tough. It really is. It really is.
What was your, as much as you can tell me, what was your wife's, how did your wife handle you coming back? I mean, was that a tough one? She
still is. She's still handling it.
Yeah.
It's sad to say, but because, like I said, we have a couple nights ago, I have nightmares real bad. Mm-hmm. So, she's seen me doing a low crawl across the bottom of the bed, and she's scared to wake me up. She's wondering what's going on. Am I going to react to her waking me up, and vice versa with my kids? I got little ones. Once in a while, they'll come up into the bed, and if I'm tossing, turning, or if I start reenacting a nightmare or something, who knows what I'll do? So there's that thought that's always in my head. So I have to be aware of my surroundings as far as here, my family, and my family is still adjusting to. Heck, I'm still adjusting coming back. So, like I said, there's really no easy cure for this. But these dogs, that's the closest thing I've found to a cure for any of this. Because they calm us down. They become, I guess, part of our tribe. We know that dog's going to be there no matter what. And yes, our family members are too. Don't get me wrong, I want...
Right.
Because this is hard for our family as well, so... But yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
So... Do dogs? I'll turn to you, Dean. So one of the observations I guess was made, in addition to whatever emotional connection that you have, is a dog is, as it's described, as sort of a bridge between you and the outside world. Do you think that's in terms of interacting with it, the dog is like as buffer that?
Absolutely.
Do you think it's true?
Absolutely. And just in my case with Gus. If I go to a grocery store, Gus always walks on my left-hand side, which keeps people kind of away from me, so nobody walks up on me quickly. Most people just stop and look at the dog. They don't approach me. If they do approach me, they approach very slowly and say, "May I pet your dog?" or something like that, which is great. When I'm standing in line, Gus will stand so he's looking behind me, so nobody's can come up behind me without me knowing it. And those are small things. If I start getting overwhelmed, Gus will alert on me and let me know, "Hey, it's time for you to leave," and I will stop what I'm doing. If I'm shopping or what, I will stop what I'm doing, and he will take me to the nearest exit. He will get me to a safe spot and get me out of there until I calm down. Once I calm down, we can resume what we were doing. He wakes me up from nightmares, like like Chris has. He sleeps on my bed with me, facing the doorway, at my feet. And if I start moving at night, he will come up and start licking me and trying to lift my hands up and trying to wake me up. He used to paw my face, but I got him out of that because I was going everywhere with scratches on my face. But, training. But he's better than any medication the VA could have ever gave me. If they'd have just gave me a service dog, a lot of my problems would have been done and over with years ago.
So when you first met the dog, was it an instantaneous attachment that you found, or did it grow over time? And was that also involved with some kind of training as well?
Of course, it was a puppy. Of course, it was a puppy, and everybody loves puppies. If you don't like puppies, you're heartless. But it took a while for us to be really close because I didn't understand his demeanor, and dogs are like anything else. Everybody has their own personalities. It took me a while to get used to Gus's personality. It took him a while to get used to me. And it built over time, like any relationship does. It builds over time, and the longer he's been with me, the stronger our relationship is. And it's amazing. It's amazing the bond that him and I have with each other. I mean, I know his schedule. He knows mine. I mean, we know each other's schedule. He knows what time I'm supposed to take my medication. I know what time he's supposed to eat. We know everything there is to know about each other. And he doesn't speak, but he knows. He absolutely knows. He triggers on anything that's wrong with me as I do with him.
So Ashley, what is it like to have this dog around? I mean, how do you relate to?
It's like having a little brother.
Is that right?
Yeah, he's extremely a part of our family. Every event that we go to, everything that we do as a family, and Gus is part of the family. He's an annoying little brother sometimes, and
right.
It's really great. He's definitely helped our whole family grow together. I mean, there's things that we haven't been able to do for years, and now that Gus is a part of our family, we can do things together now. I mean, it's incredible.
So we mentioned earlier that you volunteer with the organization. What do you do there? But B, how has that affected the way you experience this kind of trauma?
So when they do like benefits and stuff, I help out and help them put things together. The first time that I went to one of my dad's training things, at first I was like, oh, well, we're just gonna go learn how the dog sits, and like this is gonna be different. And it wasn't that. It was more of a therapy thing. They were all sitting around in a circle talking, and there was more talking than there was dog training going on. It was just a bunch of guys talking to each other and relating, and we walked around at Lowe's, and it was a bunch of guys looking at lumber and
right.
talking to each other, and you really could see the camaraderie between the veterans with each other and their dogs, and the dogs interact with each other, and it's a lot of fun for them, and it really opened my eyes because, when they come home, they're so dialed up, and to see them all together, they have a chance to dial down a little bit, and it was incredible to see all of them getting along, because that everybody in that room has issues with certain things, and to see them be able to talk to each other and laugh and relate with each other and talk about their dogs and watch their dogs play, and it was really awesome.
By the way, did you get a sense that your dad wasn't the only one, that it made you more aware of the fact that there are lots of guys like this?
Absolutely, especially once you see them like training with their dogs, you see how they react with each other. And like when we went to Lowe's, for example, you could see there was 3 of them, and you could just see them, they're just dialed up throughout Lowe's, but with these dogs, they were paying attention to their dogs, and they really had a good dynamic.
Chris, I want to ask you, so there's also this idea about, I guess the phrase was dropping the leash. That is the idea that the vets will be with these dogs for a while, but not necessarily forever. What do you think about that? Are you going to be with your dog forever, or?
Well,
no,
that's fine. I mean, once we pair you up with a dog, you're with that dog to the end.
Okay.
And that's one reason why I like having us training the veterans to train their own dog, because they form a tighter bond. And we got some veterans that, you try to take their dog away. Good luck. Thanks for playing.
Right.
I mean, we've had a couple people that's had to go into the hospital for emergency purposes, and they're like, well, we can't take your dog. You can't take your dog, and they're like, well, you just might as well call the sheriff's department because I'm not going without my dog. So I mean, it's like I say, like Dan was saying,
Okay.
sometimes these dogs, are like our family members. You protect them to the end, and vice versa. These dogs are going to be with you to the end. So yeah, once we pair you up, or you get your service dog, it's to the end.
Dan, you think it'd be with your dog to the end?
Oh, I will.
Yeah.
And I think about it every day. Average lifespan of the lab is 14 years. And
Yeah.
it's not very long.
Right.
And it breaks my heart just thinking about it. I don't want him to ever go. I mean, I really don't. It's going to be like losing a child. And thank God I've never had to experience that, but it's going to be like losing a child.
It's sort of a day by day kind of thing. Like you know that's out there, but you don't think about it.
I live my day like it's his last, because
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, we have a great time together. I mean, he runs faster than me, thank God. I don't play ball, but he does. So, it's
Right.
just we do things together, and it's fun for me. I'm home alone. My wife works, my kids work. So I'm home alone during the day, and it just gives me some fun stuff to do, and I enjoy it. And I'm not sitting around drinking and feeling sorry for myself and thinking the world's a terrible place to live. And it's wonderful therapy. Wonderful therapy.
So now, do you generally stay home, or do you have some kind of work you do?
No,
or is
sir,
it
I do not work
Not
at all.
right at the moment. Do you
No,
think
sir.
you might down the road?
I will never
maybe
work again.
You never work again.
No, sir.
Okay.
So-
What about you?
Except for I'm gonna put them to work though.
Oh well, yeah. I know.
I do volunteer. I do
Yeah,
volunteer
he helps
hours
me out a
for
lot.
U.S. Kennels.
Helps me
Don't
out a
worry. You volunteer, and he'll take a lot more. But
Yes,
what
sir.
about you? Do you work?
This is
Or is this your full?
This is my
gig?
full gig. I don't get paid for it. It's all volunteer.
Yeah.
Because like I said, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. But this, like I said, this is really therapy for me. Like Ashley was saying, all of us get together. We can all relate to each other. We feel comfortable around each other because we've all been there. We've all done it. And a lot of us are going through the same thing, so we can really relate to everything. So me going to work and doing this, totally my therapy. Totally my therapy. So
So what kind of? What's the funding source for this?
basically, for its funding, it's donations, fundraisers. We just had an awesome fundraiser on the 29th. We raised $2,200 some odd dollars at Market Street Inn. We're going to be having some more fundraisers coming up soon. We have Tito's. Sounds bad. Tito's vodka.
Okay.
But they sponsor us.
Yeah.
They do what's called a Yappy Hour, and at Market Street Inn for happy hour, and you can bring your pets too for the summer. It's every Wednesday, starting the 2nd through the last week of, or to the week after Labor Day. Every Wednesday. So whatever Market Street makes, far as 10% for his donation stuff, they're going to match that. Plus every drink that they sell of their products, all of that goes towards us. So, but we're always looking for sponsors. We're always looking for donations. So definitely, it's a hard thing to do, trying to raise money, but
Sure.
but right now, like you guys having us on, and we appreciate that, by the way. But we're getting there, and we're growing really, really, really fast, which is a good thing.
So now, obviously, you're dealing with Salisbury and this area here. I mean, are there other? I assume there are other organizations, or your organization reaches out to beyond this area. What's?
Well, we cover our area. We cover is on the Eastern Shore, Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware.
Okay.
So we cover like all 3 states on the shore, and if you live across the bridge, we'll take you as well.
Sure.
So with that, we cover a large area. And as far as other organizations, it's like Operation We Care. We help them, and they help us. As a matter of fact, they donated a nice canine first aid kit and some training obstacles as well. So, and then we try to go and help them out. So scratch your back, scratch our back. With the VFW's American Legions, they donate some money, and then likewise, if they have some events, we'll go out and set up a table, and also it's good networking because, like I say, our main thing is we're trying to reach out to these disabled veterans to help them out and get them a service dog.
We're going to be speaking with Chris Hardy. He's the executive director of an organization that takes care of veterans and these matches them up with dogs. It's called U.S. Kennels Incorporated. Also on our show, we had Dan Atkinson. He was in the Army for about 25 years, toured both Afghanistan, Iraq, amongst others, as well as the Gulf War. And also his daughter, Ashley Atkinson, who's in the National Guard. And we do appreciate you all taking the time to speak with us.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for having us.
This has been Delmarva Today. I'm Don Rush. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for watching Delmarva Today, a production of Delmarva Public Radio. Production and audio engineering by Chris Frank. Hosted by Don Rush. For podcasts, visit delmarvapublicradio.net or subscribe to the Delmarva Today podcast on iTunes. Delmarva Today can now be seen on Pack 14.